Compared to that of a gas, they are closer to each other, and it is not compressible as well. It's or difficult to compress because still the particle does not have too much space. There is a space, but very small space is available, so not compressible because already the particles are closer. But these particles can move around each other. Like example, if you have particle A, this particle A can move anywhere within the region as it is clearly visible. Like if you have this particle, the particles are not exactly vibrating at fixed position, but they are able to move from one place to another. And when we compare the third state, that is the gaseous state, so what you see in the gas, it does not have any fixed volume or a shape. It takes the shape of a container as well as it occupies the space available. It has very low density and it is compressible because the particles, they have greater distance between them, so it is easy to compress. So particles in a gases are very far apart. They travel normally at a high speed. They are moving randomly. When we say they are moving randomly, it means there is no particular direction. Like if this was a particle, this particle can change its direction many times. So there is no specific direction in which this particle is moving. And there is a negligible force of attraction between the particles, or the force between the particles is very weak. So this is another view of the particles of gas, liquid and solid. In a gas, you can see the particles are moving randomly. They are continuously changing the direction. Whereas in liquid, the particles can move around each other, and in solid, the particle can vibrate about a fixed position. Then the second objective of this, you should be able to, this top side on the slide, you will find the syllabus objective. This is what is there in the syllabus. So according to syllabus, you should be able to describe the structure of solids, liquids and gases in terms of particle separation, arrangement and types of motion. So when we compare solid, structure of a solid, the particles are held together by a relatively strong force. When we compare liquid, the particles have a weak force, so they are further apart. And when we compare the gas, the particles are far apart from each other. And when we compare the arrangement and type of motion, so in solid, the particle do not have free movement. They can vibrate about the fixed position, wherein in liquids, the particle when move around each other, and in gases, the particles are very spread out and they can move randomly. So you should be able to recognize the solid, liquid and gas in terms of structure. You should be able to explain the structure of solid, liquid and gas in terms of particle separation, arrangement and types of motion. So when we say particle separation, so in solid, the particles are very close to each other. The particles are not very close, but they can move around each other. And in gases, the particles are far away from each other. In solid arrangement, it's a regular arrangement. Liquid, no regular arrangement. Gases, no regular arrangement. In solid, the particles can vibrate. In liquids, particles can vibrate as well as move around each other or move past each other. And in gases, the particles move randomly at high speed. Is it clear? Any doubt in this objective? Any question or a doubt? This is the first topic, which is a basic topic, and most of the things about matters, the properties of solid, liquid, and gas, you have studied in class 8 or class 7 as well. Then the objective, describe the change in state in terms of melting, boiling, evaporation, freezing, condensation, and sublimation. So what we call the change in state, like example, if we have a solid and a solid is converting into liquid. So when a solid is converting into liquid, what we call this change state, we call that as melting. If a liquid is changing into gas, we call that as boiling or evaporation. There is a difference between a boiling and evaporation. We will discuss that difference as well. But first, we are only discussing the changes in the state. So when a liquid is changing into gas, what we can call that as a boiling, or we can also call that as evaporation. When a gas is converting into liquid, we call that as condensation. When a liquid is converting into solid, we can call that as solidification, or we can also say that freezing. And when a solid directly convert into gas, we call sublimation, or a gases directly convert into solid, deposition, or you can also say that as solidification, sublimation, that is acceptable. So both changes, when a solid change to gas or a gas change back to solid, we call that as sublimation. Then you should be able to explain the changes of state in matter in terms of kinetic theory. What is kinetic theory? There are some points related to kinetic theory. What is basically a kinetic theory? So the kinetic theory explain the idea about the matter and the states of the matter. What it state? It state all the matter is made up of tiny moving particles invisible to the naked eye. You cannot see with your eye. Different substances have different particles such as atoms, molecules, or ions. So everything is made up of particles, and these particles, tiny particles, can be termed as atom, molecules, or ions. What is the difference between atom and molecule or the ion? So the term atom means it's a particle which contain further subatomic particle. So example, we have a nucleus here. This is a structure, basic structure of the atom. We have a nucleus. Inside the nucleus, what we have a particle such as neutrons and protons. And around the nucleus, we have a particle known as electron. So basically, what is atom? Atom contain equal number of proton and neutron, proton and electrons. So when we have equal number of protons and electrons, what we call that? We call that as atom. Like example, if I was having 2 protons and I have 2 electrons. So when we have 2 protons and 2 protons and 2 electrons in a particle, what we call that particle? We call that as atom. But what about the molecule? The term molecule means group of atoms. So when 2 or more atoms join together, combine together, what we call that as molecule. Like this is one atom, and this joined with another. So what we call that as a molecule. And the simple definition of an atom is a substance which cannot be broken down chemically. That's also a definition for atom. And what about the ions? The term ions means it contain different number of protons and electrons. So if we have different number of proton and electron, we call that as an ion. So here is a nucleus. A neutron is there. Like example, this contains 2 protons and it only contains 1 electron. So this atom does not have equal number of proton and electron. So if it does not have equal number of proton and electron, we call that as an ion. And an ion can be a positive ion or it can be a negative. A positive ion contains more protons and a negative ion contains more electrons. So whenever you have a matter may have atoms, a matter may have molecules, or a matter may have ions. If it is having equal number of proton and electron, we call that it is having atoms. If it is having a group of atoms joined together, combined together, we call it is having, this matter is made up of molecules. And if there are particles but different number of protons and electrons, we call that this matter is consist of ions. So example, say this is a matter. A matter can be a solid, liquid or gas because there are 3 states, and this matter is having particles So example, it contains 1 proton, 1 electron, 1 proton, 1 electron, and 1 proton, 1 electron. So my question is this matter made up of atoms, molecule, or ion? You can use the chat to state the answer. What this matter consists of or made up of? So this matter is made up of atoms, molecules, or ions. It contains each atom contains 1 proton and 1 electron. So basically, this matter is consist of atoms. Why not molecule or ions? Because to be a molecule, it should be a group of atoms. Means they should join together. So when if it was a molecule, then how it should appear? It should appear like this. That atoms join together. And in a molecule we may have 2 atoms, we may have 3 atoms, it can be different number, but they should join together. So when they are joined together, in that case that matter is made up of molecules. And if it was having different number of the particles, like example, there are two protons, one electron, two protons, one electron. So what will be the charge here on this? Because it contains more proton and less electron, so the charge will be positive. So if the matter consists of atoms which are having different number of protons and electron, then what we call that matter consists of ions. So a matter can be made up of atoms, it can be made up of molecules, or it can be comprises of ions. Is it clear? Any doubt? Any question? The concept of atoms, molecules, and ions. So first thing, according to the kinetic particle theory, it states that all matters are made up of tiny particles, and what we call these particles can be atoms, it can be molecules, or it can be ions. And these particles are moving all the time. The high temperature, the particle will move faster. So if we increase the temperature, the particles will move much faster. So example, you have say a piece of iron, identical, two pieces of iron, identical, same type, but they are at different temperatures. The first one is at 20 degrees and the second one is at 50 degrees centigrade. Which sample the particles will move faster? In which sample the particles are moving faster? At 20 or at 50? So at 50 or B, the particles are moving faster. So it means the temperature and the speed or the motion of the particle are directly proportional. So if you increase the temperature, it will increase the speed of the particles. Higher temperature, the particle will move faster. Lower temperature, the particle will move slower. So when we supply heat energy, the particle will move much faster as compared to when we cool down. Then the heavier particles will move slower compared to the lighter particle at same temperature. So when you compare the particle, their masses, example, if the temperature was same, then the particle will move with the same speed. By example, here at 20 degrees and 50, because the temperatures are different, the particles are moving at different speed. But if you keep the temperature same, then the particle will move with the same speed if the identical particles are there. But what will happen if you have two different materials with different mass of the particles? Material A consists of heavy particles and material B consists of lighter particles. If you have any question, you can use a mic, or when you're asking a question in a chat, it's better everyone, it should be visible to everyone, so they also understand from your question. So example, we have two different methods. Here the particle example, particle mass is 30. And the other one, the particle mass is only 5. And we are supplying the heat energy. We are heating both of them. Which one you think the particle will move faster? Lighter or the heavy particles? So which material you think the particle will move faster? The lighter particles, because they have less mass, so they can move easily. So it will move faster. So lighter particles move faster as compared to that of heavy particles. So that is the third point of the kinetic molecular theory or kinetic theory of the matter, that it is stated that the heavy particles will move slower as compared to lighter particle at a given temperature. Is it clear? The kinetic particle theory? Any doubt till now? Then how we can find the mass of the particle? Like how you will know which particle is heavy and which particle is lighter? So for that purpose, like example, if I say I have two gases, carbon dioxide CO2 and I have ammonia NH3. And the question is which particles will move faster at a given temperature. So how you can work out? For this purpose you should know the mass in exam, because at the in the exam you will have the periodic table, so you can work out the mass from the periodic table. Right now this is a lecture 1, so I am giving you the masses. Like if I say the mass of the carbon is 1 and mass of oxygen is 16 and mass of nitrogen is 14 and mass of hydrogen is 1. So how I can work out the mass of carbon dioxide? So carbon dioxide means it contains one carbon. So mass of a carbon is 12. So that is 12 plus mass of oxygen is 16. So that is 16. But how many oxygen are there? 2. So this will be multiplied by 2. So 16 multiplied by 2, that's 32. And 32 plus 12, that is equals to 44. So mass of carbon dioxide is 44. And what about the mass of ammonia? Nitrogen. Nitrogen is 14 plus hydrogen. Mass of hydrogen is 1. And how many hydrogen are there? 3. So that is multiplied by 3. So 14 plus 3, that is equals to 17. So which is lighter, ammonia or carbon dioxide? Which gas is lighter, ammonia or carbon dioxide? So ammonia is lighter. So lighter gases, it will move faster, and the heavy gas, it will move slower. Is it clear how I work out the masses for each compound? That carbon dioxide, the formula for carbon dioxide is CO2, and we know the mass of carbon, oxygen. Carbon is 12, oxygen 16 times 2. So 32 plus 12, that's equal to 44. And nitrogen is 14 plus hydrogen is 1 multiplied by 3, that's equal to 13. So 14 plus 4, sorry, that's equal to 3. So 14 plus 3, that's equal to 17. So 17, it's a lighter one. The mass will be given. You will have the periodic table. I will show how you will use the periodic table to get the mass as well. The session will end less than a minute, so I'll share another link with you and continue the discussion. So I'm ending the session now and share another link.